All right,
it.
let's jump in. All right, so hey everyone, my name is Antara Holloway. I'm with mxdwn.com and I'm interviewing Clementine Creevy from Cherry Glazerr.
Hi,
Thanks
how's
so
it going?
much. Thanks so much for being here. Okay,
Thanks for having me.
of course. All right, so in an interview with Paper Mag a few years ago, you agreed that your apocalyptic project was your angry album, while your Stuffed and Ready album was the dark and sad project. What
Mhm.
feelings would you say are elicited from your fourth album, I Don't Want You Anymore?
I definitely feel like this record was like me coming back to my roots a lot and kind of reminded me a lot of my first album in a lot of ways. Like Apocalyptic was my second and Stuffed and Ready was my third. And this one really reminded me of Haxel Princess, which is my first one, where I feel like a lot of the way I structured the songs was a lot more sort of free, and a lot of the like structures in within the songs kind of have a sort of like openness to them, and I feel like that allowed me to just kind of like sit in the feelings of them a lot more. And that reminded me a lot of my first record. I guess you could say it was like maybe vibier than I'd been doing in the past.
Vibe year. I love that. I'm gonna
Yeah.
steal that. So kind of going off of you saying you got to kind of sit in your feels a little bit more. I know
Mhm.
Apocalyptic got the rap as the angry album, but then some of that anger kind of spilled into Stuffed and Ready. But then when we get to I don't want you anymore, your feelings, your lyrics feel a bit more soft and there's more longingness in them. Like, because I'm addicted to your love, I die for you sounds way more romantic than Vexed. As someone who writes deeply personal lyrics, what would you say was the catalyst for this shift?
I definitely was writing about certain relationships that I was in, and um I mean, I am kind of a romantic and like can fall really deep into those feelings. So a lot of it had to do with like how I feel and how I work with myself within those romantic relationships. And so, yeah, I mean, I hate to say it, but it was a lot about boys,
That's
honestly.
okay. That's okay. Okay, so diving deeper on your storytelling through lyricism, you mentioned that the album's second single, Ready for You, is about pushing people away because you're kind of like scared of hurting them with your own baggage. Were you writing from a place of personal experience or simply trying to capture the feelings of your audience as a whole?
I think that what you just said about what it's about is really accurate, and like I'm writing a lot about this fear that I'm still really working through, which is what you just said, hurting people with my own baggage, and trying to not see myself as like um you know having the ability to do that, and just trying to accept my flaws and my issues as like a human person, and I do have like a really deep seated fear that I'm hurting the people around me because like of certain stuff that I haven't finished working through within myself. And yeah, that song is really about that, and it's about trying to like grapple with that whole idea, and kind of I think recently I've allowed myself a little bit more like grace, and I have like a lot of friends around me who have recently told me that like I could never do that, like, and that I don't have like the power to do that, and that everybody has, shit that they're working through. And so I feel really lucky for them, and for, the fact that I have a lot of lovely people in my life. But yeah, that song's definitely about working through those sort of feelings of feeling like, you know, having that kind of being afraid of hurting people that way. Um, but yeah, it's a little bit of like a neuroses that I have. But yeah, that song is really about working through those feelings. I just like am happy that lately I've been able to kind of work on that part of myself a little bit more.
Yeah.
Because what I've learned is that like you're actually not that powerful, babe. Like
You're like, you're not that girl.
yeah, you're not. Like you're okay.
So it sounds like it was written out of personal experience, but then also it just happened to capture the feelings of a whole population of people. So I feel like that's usually the goal of musicians. So when you write your music, who do you most often find yourself speaking to through your lyrics?
I mean, honestly, I'm mostly speaking to myself a lot of the times. Like for me, writing and music making is really therapeutic, and mostly I'm like I'll be writing something and the words will kind of come out of me, and then I'll listen to it the next day or something, and it'll help me figure out how I'm really feeling inside. So I think on in a lot of ways it's kind of like a journal, where I'm like speaking to myself. And like you said about relatability, I think that that can create a lot of relatability when you see someone else's journal and you're kind of like, whoa, like, so we're all having these feelings and thoughts, and that's really amazing and cool. Yeah, and that always just like amazes me when people are able to relate to those things that I'm feeling as well. So yeah, I always think that's cool.
I also think it's super cool. So it's also just funny that the title of your album is I Don't Want You Anymore, but then like as we mentioned, like the track list is just riddled with like deep feelings and longing and being in love. So I'm just kind of wondering like what was your thought process when you were coming up with the name for this album? Was this juxtaposition intentional?
So yeah, the title is actually directed at myself, and it's sort of my idea of other people like not wanting me around, and so I don't want you anymore is actually directed towards me and myself. Like kind of how I was explaining before, a lot of my insecurities and feelings, I felt like that would be the perfect title, to sort of relate that anxiety. But yeah, it's funny because I always come up with names for stuff last. Like, I never think about the titles and the names of stuff. And the label was like, Clem, we really need a title for the album. Like, we have to start like working on it. Like, we have to start like putting it together, and we need the title, we need the name. And I was like, it's coming, it's coming. It just has to come to me.
You're like,
And they were
wait
like,
for it,
oh my
wait
God.
for it.
They're like, we need it. They were like, we need it. And I was like, okay, 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 like it's coming, it'll come to me. And then they were all freaking out. And then like I was in my car, and that was a line in a song that I heard on the radio, of like this really old song that was playing on the radio. I can't even remember like the name of it or what it was or something, but the singer said like I don't want you anymore, and I was like, oh, that's so cool and beautiful, and like perfectly encapsulates how I'm feeling, um and this sort of like anxiety in this like really simple and direct way, which I love. Um, and and then I was like, okay, boom, I got it, which is always how my titles have always come. They've always been very they just like click to me, and usually sort of towards the end of the record making process. So I was like, all right, guys, I got it. I got it. And they were like, woo. They were like, it was really down to the wire. They were like, oh my
Right.
God, okay.
So the
But
music came before the title.
yeah.
So the album
Mhm.
was pretty much done, and all you had to do was basically like wrap it with this cute little bow, and it was I Don't Want You
Exactly.
Anymore.
Yes.
I
Yeah.
love that. I was not expecting that answer. Okay, so your
Yeah.
last album,
Much to the dismay of Secretly Canadian, my label.
yeah, no, honestly, they probably, like you said, they were just relieved that it even got in at this point.
Yeah,
So
exactly.
your last album release took place 4 years ago, maybe a little bit over 4 years ago now, and a
Hmm.
lot can happen in 4 years. What have you
Hmm.
and the band been up to during that time? And is there anything that you guys learned over that period that was put into this album?
Hmm. Yeah, I mean, we did a big tour with Portugal the Man, which was cool. That was like maybe 2 years ago now. But yeah, it was like a stadium tour, which was cool. We'd never done that before. And it was funny because they were in like two massive buses and we were in a little van, like chasing them around the country, like showing up to the stadiums, like in our tiny little van. And yeah, that was just a cool experience to be able to like play some of the biggest venues in the country that you can play. And I feel like it gave us just like, I don't know, like a really cool sort of idea of like how big a show can be. And yeah, so that was just rad. And we played like Madison Square Garden.
Oh, wow.
And yeah, that was just like an epic experience and like really, really fun. So yeah, being on tour is really cool. I think it's like how bands really prosper.
Mhm.
And so I'm just like always, I mean, it's fucking hard and like you don't sleep. And yeah, you basically don't sleep for a month because it's just like you're working so much. But I still really love it. And I feel like some of my best memories of like being in a band are always on tour. And I just love how like close you can get with the people who you're
Mhm.
traveling with. And like the whole experience is amazing to me and always really like inspiring because I feel like it actually makes this whole thing like feel very real, and creating that connection with people in real life is like awesome. So yeah, just like playing shows, doing that big tour is mostly what we were up to. And then I was working on the record for a while. um and yeah, I had been like doing tons and tons of sessions with producers and other artists, and then I finally did a session with Eve, who was the producer on this album.
Mhm.
And we did one song together, and I was like, Eve is so cool, and like he totally gets the vision. And he had done a bunch of the Eve Tumor stuff, which I really loved. So I was like, okay, I love that Eve's Tumor record. And he was just like so kind and was like really just down to help me like fulfill my vision.
Mhm.
And yeah, I don't know. I love Eve. I love working with him. Shout out Eve. So that's how I found Eve. And then he was like, yeah, I'm down to do the whole record. So we started on that. And then it took us a little while. Like, I probably was working on the record for like 6 months to like a year.
Mhm.
And yeah, and then we kind of put it together slowly over the course of that time. But I'm glad it's finally out.
Yeah, we're glad it's finally out. It really does sound like you put
Yeah.
a lot of work and love into this album. And that kind of leads me into my next question because I know that you're involved in a lot of the moving parts of your album creation process, from you singing the lead to playing guitar to doing the synths and even some of the production. Where do you tend to draw inspiration from as you create all of these sounds for your music? And do you have different points of inspiration for each component of the process?
Yeah, totally. Like, I've been doing this thing recently where I'm really inspired by certain production and like sounds and vibes. So, I definitely was like, for this album, I was like, I really love the way like these certain songs sound production wise. So like let's start there. So a lot of where I was coming from with this was like production based.
Mhm.
Um and I'm trying to think, like there was definitely, we were thinking a lot about like uh the Cure, but then also yeah, like just some like early 80s stuff and like early alternative stuff, so that was coming through for sure. We were definitely trying to do like that style of production. So yeah, I definitely started with a lot of production ideas for this album, but it's funny because I've actually sort of started doing the opposite for the new stuff I'm working on now, where I'm really trying to like focus on the song itself and not worry so much about the production, and trying to like start at the basics and the foundation and make sure that like the song sounds good on an acoustic guitar. So yeah, I'm always like, that's the cool thing is like I feel like I'm always like growing in another direction with like every step that I take, like making new records and stuff. But yeah, production probably was like the biggest inspo.
That's kind of crazy because even though I think this project sounds different than your other albums, now I'm like the next project is probably gonna be just out of the water, like out of left field. Like, oh my gosh, like who even knew she had this in her bag?
Oh my god,
What
you
what's
never
your
know.
no, I apparently we don't. What's your favorite track to record from this album?
I really loved doing um the title track. That was one of my favorite songs on the album, I Don't Want You Anymore. We That was actually the first one that I did with Eve, and we recorded that one first. And I just really love the way that turned out. Like I started it on this synth that I have, which is like my baby. It's like a Korg Poly 6 synth from the 80s. And I just like love the way it sounds. It's really unique. And I started the song on that synth, and then everything kind of built out from there. And like yeah, we kept it in the song, but we really built off from that. So like the whole song kind of grew from that, and it didn't even become like an essential part of it anymore. But I really love that track, and that was one of my favorite ones to record. And we did like a ton of guitar tracks on top of it, and it just grew into this thing that ended up being one of my favorite songs on the album.
In the title track. So there we
And
go. Yeah, and
yeah,
there we go.
yeah,
Is
exactly.
is there a song you're most excited to play live?
That's a good question. I love playing Ready for You. I feel like I love Sammy's bass line on that song. I also love her bass line on Soft Like a Flower. Like that one goes nuts for me. And she's always my bass player, Sammy. She's like a shy queen. And every time she's playing that song, I'm like, yes, Sammy, yes. And she's like, she's like, no, stop.
Not too embarrassing her.
I literally. But I just go nuts for it. I love that bass line. And yeah, Soft Like a Flower, one of my favorite songs to play for sure. So yeah, I'm excited to do that one on the road when
Okay,
we
I'm
go out.
excited to hear it. So I know that
Yeah.
you guys are kicking off an 11 leg tour at the end of February. And
Mhm.
this album obviously sounds a little different than the last two. So can it also be said that this tour will carry a different vibe to it than what fans may be used to?
Yeah, definitely. Like how I was saying about it being a little vibier, we have a lot of cool ideas for the show. And yeah, I can't wait to bring it to life. We're playing as a four piece, a lot of like synths and a little visual show that we're creating. So yeah, it's definitely gonna be different than the ones in the past. Like on the other tour for Stuffed and Ready, it was a little bit like really sort of like loud and boisterous, and I wore like a lot of yellows and pinks. And this one is a little bit moodier, I think, but it definitely still has like a lot of intensity and like heart. So I think it's just bringing that those two things kind of together.
Well, I'm excited to see how that goes.
Yeah, so
Um,
excited to perform. I can't
what
wait.
what stop are you most excited to come to?
I mean, this is basic, but I just love playing in LA. Like, hometown shows are my favorite. The fans rule LA all day. I'm just like a shameless LA lover. I just like don't care.
Same, same, okay. And I want everyone to know, like when I go other places, I'm like, I'm from LA. We're a little different over there.
Dude, same. I don't even care. People like to get mad about it, and I love it. I'm just like, you're just mad because
Yeah,
you don't
you're
get
just upset because we have 60-degree winters. Sorry.
it. It's true. Yeah, can't wait for the hometown show. And then also, Brooklyn will be awesome too. So can't wait to play in New York as well. And that's the last stop. Yeah, so it'll be like closing the show out in New York, and that'll be really fun.
Yeah, grand finale kind of vibe.
Exactly.
I love that. All right, so we have made it to the last question, unfortunately. So I know you've considered yourself to be a feminist since the age of 17, and you've mentioned that being a feminist and being so awake about everything around you can get exhausting. How do you feel like your personal form of feminism has changed as you've gotten older and continue to make art surrounding this topic?
That's a really good question. Um, I'm definitely the way I feel about it is like, the definition of feminism is like uh women and femmes having, like political and economic stability and equality. And I think that's such a basic idea that everyone should be on it. And it's so weird to me that like people wouldn't agree with that. It's just like the idea of giving humanity to everybody. And it's crazy to me that anyone would like think otherwise, I guess, but that's like me being a little like LA bubble maybe. I'm just like can't even conceive of it, like the idea of someone not like being down with that philosophy.
Same.
Um yeah, it's crazy. But like yeah, people I think that'll always be true to me, and I fucking love girls, and I will always stand for them, and I love seeing art made by women and femme people. And yeah, I just think it's so fatiguing to constantly um ingest art made by men, and I think it just gets fucking boring after a while. And so, I'm always just down to support girls and women, and arguably that's the best art, and that's where, the real shit is. So, yeah, I'll always do that, and I think that'll always be very true to who I am as a person.
Nice. Do you feel like the kind of feminism that you adapted like when you were younger is a little different than how it is now as an adult?
Maybe, yeah, in a way. I think it's more nuanced now. I think like I don't know. I definitely feel like it's not too different. I always kind of um I still feel very deeply in my heart and have the same value set that I did back then. So it's honestly not that different. I think maybe just now there is like a part of me that wants to like show myself more than rather just talk about things. And like, you know um I think that that can be like such an effective way of really pushing forward those concepts, is just trying to embody them, and um trying to kind of live my life the way I want to see it. So I think I try to do that now first before, try to like walk the walk and not just talk the talk, I guess.
And honestly, I love that. You're living by the philosophy, and that's all we can really kind of like hope to do, is like we're
Totally.
living what we're preaching. So
Yes.
thank you so much also for having this interview with me. Like you were actually awesome and I freaking love you.
You too. You
And
too.
and I want to wish you all the best on your tour. So
Thank you so
yeah,
much.
like this has been Clementine Creevy from Cherry Glazerr and Antara from mxdwn.com.
Thank you, Antara. Nice talking
Thank
to
you.
you.
You too. Have a
Have
great
a good
day.
rest of your day. Bye.
Bye.